All right, theory people, let's talk about first inversion chords as in the context of figured bass and also just in analysis and tonal music. Okay, so we've talked about triads being in different inversions. For example, if we're in the key of C, that would be a one chord in root position. If the third is in the bass, that would be a 1-6. And the defining feature to make it a first inversion chord is that the E is in the bass. The upper notes could be in any order, so this would also be a 1-6 because it's the notes of C major, E is in the bass. Okay. Now, why might we want to use a 1-6? A couple reasons. The main ones are to make the bass line a melody. Okay, so that's like a very big one. You know how when we do our harmonic dictation and even figured bass, we think about moving the soprano, alto, and tenor as smoothly as possible, but the bass is just leaping around from root to root. It's not very melodic. So now we can use inversions to create more of a melody in the bass line. Okay. Second reason, variety. Gives you another sound to use in your harmonies. Okay. Seems like there was a third reason. Okay, we'll come back to that. Melody, variety. Okay, so let's just talk about some simple part writing with this. Okay, so what if I have a one chord in C and we go 1, 5, 1. Okay. Now, if we go 1, 5, 1, the bass would be C, G, C, which is a leaping bass. Okay. What if we want to make the bass more melodic? Well, we could consider what's the first inversion of the G chord. We have G, B, D. First inversion would have B in the bass. And look, we could do that, and all of a sudden our bass line is a melody rather than something that's leapy. Okay, so that's a very good demonstration of using first inversion chords to give you a melody rather than something that leaps. All right, so that's one. Here's another one. What if you have two C chords in a row? Okay, that can sound a little monotonous. Instead, maybe you want to go from 1 to 1-6, just to give you some variety in the bass. The third one up here is related to variety, but it's to give you a weaker version of a chord. Okay, so it gives you variety in strength. So say a piece ends 5, 1 in root position. That's going to sound very conclusive because 5 to 1 is a strong progression. They're both root position. It can sound like the end of a piece, and maybe you don't want it to sound as conclusive or decisive or as terminative. So maybe you would use a first inversion chord and go 5, 6 to 1. That won't sound as strong. Or you could go from 5 to 1, 6. That will also not sound as strong. Let me play this for you so you can hear. So say we're in the key of C, volume here. I'll go up a little higher. There's our 5. Do you hear this? Sounds decisive. Instead, though, we could go, it doesn't sound as strong, moving 5 to 1. That's 5, 6 to 1. We could go 5 to 1, 6. That's also weaker. Okay, so those are all possibilities. The only practical difference between first inversion and root position is doubling. In root position, we generally double the root. Okay. In first inversion, think about the use of first inversion chords. They create melody. They're used for variety. In a way, it's increasing the linear flow of the voices. So first inversion, we actually can double anything as long as the voice leading is good. Okay, so there's no prescription for first inversion. You can double root or third or fifth, whatever works best. Okay, one exception, don't double the leading tone. Okay, and you can definitely hear why you wouldn't want to do that. Imagine, again, we're in the key of C. And I'm going to go to a 5, 6. Do you hear that chord? And the leading tone doubled. Now the leading tone wants to resolve up. If I double the leading tone, I get parallel octaves when I resolve it. Okay? In a nutshell, root position, double the root. First inversion, double whatever works best, but don't double the leading tone. The textbook gives you very detailed examples of different ways of doubling things. Don't worry about that. Keep in mind, make it as smooth as possible, double whatever works best, and don't double the leading tone, and you'll be fine. So let's take a look at this right here. So we've got C, I'm going to go G, E, C. There's our one chord, 2 roots, a third and a fifth. Here we're going to want to go G, B, D, and we can double whatever works best. All right, so obviously G here is going to be good. Here, this C, see how this goes to B? This can't go to B for 2 reasons. That would be parallel octaves with the bass, plus it would be a doubled leading tone, which would then resolve as parallel octaves into the next chord. So this one needs to be C. This one I want to take to here to be as smooth as possible. And now we can go to the final chord. Okay. Remember, the problem with parallels is between is parallel octaves and parallel fifths. If you look at the tenor and the bass here, that's parallel tenths. That's great. We just don't want parallel fifths or parallel octaves because that destroys the independence of the voices. So let's listen to this. So in a way, okay, this sounds different than root position 1, 5, 1, because this is actually 3, this is 4 little melodies. And so the 5 chord is a byproduct of voice leading. This is a neighbor note to C. This is a neighbor note to E. This is a neighbor note to C. And then we have a common tone. So you can think of this as we have 3 neighbor notes. them at the same time, it happens to form a first inversion 5 chord. So is it more important that it's a 5 chord, or is it more important that it's a linear melody? And the answer to that is yes. It's not one over the other. They're both important. Okay, so that's a linear thing. Now let's look at variety. Okay, so say we're going from 1 to 1/6. I'm just going to sketch out this kind of spread out voicing so you can see it quite well. 2 roots, a third, and a fifth. Now, there are 2 main ways to do this, and it will depend on the context. It will depend on what you're trying to do melodically. Okay, the first thing you could do, if you can double anything, then you can just keep the upper 3 voices the same, and you have a legitimate doubling of the 1/6. Here we had 2 roots, third and a fifth. This leapt up. We still have 1 root, 2 thirds, and a fifth. That's one way. Very simple. Okay. Another thing that happens very frequently is this. I'll do the same progression, 1 to 1/6. I'm going to write it here. We've got this. Okay. When you move from root position of a chord to first inversion of a chord or back, often you may have what's called a voice exchange. Oh, my cat. Okay. He's a troublemaker. All right, so here we go. A voice exchange works this way. Do you see we've got C going to E? This voice is C to E. This voice is E. We're going to take E to C. So they actually swap. So C moves to E, E goes to C. And they just switch notes. That's called a voice exchange. Literally, the soprano and the bass are exchanging parts. The other voices can just sustain, super smooth. So this works really well. This one is smoother. You see the upper 3 voices don't move. This one is more balanced because 1 voice moves up, 1 moves down. This one also does maintain 2 roots in the chord, which has a slight benefit because a lot of our voice leading is based on working with chords with 2 roots in them. So if, for example, this was going into a root position 4 chord next, then it might work better to have this voice exchange here giving us 2 C's, because then if it goes to 4, watch what happens. This C can sustain, this G can go here, and this A can go here. It's very, very smooth. Okay. Here, it's a similar kind of thing. F would resolve up, C would sustain. And then we're going to need an A. We've actually got a problem here. Okay, this E cannot go up to F because that would be parallel octaves with the bass. So this G has to go to F, and this E has to go up to A to give us a complete chord. So that is creating some problems. In fact, that's too much space there, so we'd have to come down to A. All right. So because of what happened in this context, the voice exchange worked better. That doesn't mean it will always be the best one, though. You look at the specific context and you figure out what works best. I'm going to stop this because I want to do videos with that are a little shorter, so you can repeat them if necessary. Right, so this is the first one, introducing the concepts of first inversion chords.